You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello and welcome to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho. This week, my guest is Carol Searle, who, as well as being a virtual assistant and community manager, which is, I think, something I need at the moment, also has two long-term conditions which affect her ability to exercise, but we'll talk a little bit more about how she manages her activity levels around that. Carol actually has fibromyalgia and ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about that. But do you want to give us a little bit of information about you, Carol, and how long you've had these conditions and how they impact on you?
Hi, Sarah, of course. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. As you say, I have fibromyalgia and ME. The easier word for that is chronic fatigue syndrome. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia back in 2009. I just started off with just getting the worst pains ever in my hips and my lower back, really struggling to walk. So yes, I was fatigued as well, but it was mainly chronic pains I was getting. And so I was diagnosed with the fibromyalgia. And then back in towards the end of 2021, after probably about a year of more tests, so I was suffering really greatly with fatigue. So it probably took the best part of a year. And then finally, toward the end of 2021, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome as well. The specialist that I spoke to, she believes that I probably actually had the chronic fatigue syndrome back in 2009 as well. But the pains were so bad at that time that they masked the fatigue symptoms. Really since 2009, I suppose, for both.
Wow. Fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome do tend to go hand in hand, although they are completely different conditions. They do seem to coexist more often than not in a lot of people. So tell us a little bit about how, let's start with fibromyalgia, how that actually feels. How does it impact you?
Well, luckily the symptoms for that did actually die away quite a lot after the diagnosis in 2009. Because originally when they were first testing and when they came back with the diagnosis, the pains were just horrendous in my hips, in my lower spine. It was absolute agony basically to walk sometimes. Luckily those pains have now, they've pretty much gone, unless I'm having a flare up, which, touch wood, isn't very often. I actually manage my fibromyalgia very well. I'll get I can tell if I've overdone it. I'll get like the occasional pains starting in my hips and my back, and strange little stabbing pains all over my body. Just no rhyme or reason behind them, but just strange little stabbing pains that just come and go. But yes, as I say, I've been very lucky. It does seem to have subsided, the fibromyalgia side, and it's more the chronic fatigue that has now taken over.
Do you think, though, with the fibromyalgia, the fact that you are aware of and maybe work with the early warning signs has helped in the management of it, in that you said, right, okay, early warning sign, need to slow down a bit or rest a bit? Do you think that helps?
I must admit, when they had it was just a diagnosis of the fibromyalgia. I must admit I was rather naughty, and I got the warning signs, but I would try and push myself through them until they did become really bad. I've actually only learned to listen to my body more since the chronic fatigue diagnosis. So yeah, now with both of them, I will notice the warning signs, and I will pay attention to them and bring things back slightly, just so I can try and keep everything under control.
So tell us a little bit about how the chronic fatigue syndrome impacts you, because I think, a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I get really tired or I get really fatigued, but actually chronic fatigue is a very, very different beast to just being overworked, exhausted, knackered, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I must admit it's a bit of an eye roll when people do say that. If I try and say to somebody, I'm absolutely exhausted, yeah, the typical response is, oh yeah, I've had a really busy day. I'm absolutely exhausted as well today. And it gets tiring having to explain to them. It feels sometimes like it's a competition as to who's more tired because yeah, it's not. It's not just exhaustion from having a really busy day. It makes you feel physically ill. I can feel sick. I can feel dizzy. I can get heart palpitations, headaches, sore throats. It really does absolutely knock you for six. I know some people with chronic fatigue, they actually they have flare ups and they can end up in a wheelchair. So luckily, I'm very lucky that I don't have it to that extent. I just have it to the extent where I can feel like I have flu or something coming on maybe. And in that case, then I know it is time. I need to sit back and try and rest.
So again, it's being aware of the early warning signs, literally, or prodromal signs as they're often known. It's kind of, okay, right, yeah. So one of the things, most of us are told to do in everyday life is we need to exercise, we need to be more active and things like that. How does having these long-term conditions impact on kind of an exercise routine, shall we say?
They can impact greatly. So I have to plan my whole day, my whole week around these kind of flare ups. So yeah, I mean, I love going walking. I do lots of walks with my family, but it's all about not pushing your body. It's all about listening to your body. So for me, I couldn't go and do a stint down the gym, or I couldn't go and do a really high energy sports class. I couldn't do anything like that. So I kind of have to stick to the lighter exercises like the walking or the cycling, swimming, just the more gentle things on the body.
Cool. So when you were diagnosed or subsequently, what kind of advice or support were you given about physical activity?
Again, it was all about they've said, like, try and exercise. If you find it's not working for you, because basically the symptoms don't always come on straight away with chronic fatigue syndrome. They will come on the next day. So if you do an exercise and it's brilliant, you've managed to do the exercise class or go down the gym. I don't do the gym, by the way. I just do other exercises. But yeah, if you do an exercise class and you manage it, that's brilliant. But sometimes you can end up waking up the next day and feeling absolutely horrendous. So obviously that's your sign that unfortunately that class isn't for you. So the advice that I've been given is just to start off everything just bit by bit and build on it, so I can gradually kind of find where my limit is, so I'm not overdoing it. So I mean the basic, I was trying to do walk fit classes, and I must admit, even though I loved them, I was finding them too hard on my body the day after. So we've brought it back. My specialist just advised, just go for just normal walks around the village where I live, and just see each day how far you can actually push that before you find the limit, so this is what suits your body without doing too much.
I think it's something as well that I know I run training in working with chronic fatigue conditions, and one of the recommendations isn't to do what you think you can do. It's actually just to do a little bit and then monitor for the next 24, 48 hours how you feel, what impact it's had. If you're absolutely fine, you could maybe do a little bit more, but if it knocks you out, you need to do less. And I think it isn't just let's try an hour's class and see what happens. It's let's try 5 minutes or 10 minutes and monitor how it impacts on the body. And I think that's the sort of advice that a lot of people don't necessarily understand. And I think as an industry within sort of fitness, we tend to be let's go to the gym for an hour, let's do an hour's class. Whereas for people who've got any kind of condition that involves fatigue, because like you say, because it's a delayed onset of impact, it's so important to do less and make sure that's manageable than do more and knock yourself out for 3 days afterwards. So I know when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that you're actually working with somebody now on a much more holistic approach, sort of nutrition, lifestyle, as well as activity. Do you think this is something that is actually very important when it comes to these conditions, rather than just addressing activity?
Yep, 100%. For things like fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, it's the whole package. So you need to make sure that you're eating the correct things, so the correct foods are going into your body. So you're trying to give yourself that natural energy, because obviously I don't have a lot of energy. Yeah. So yeah, if I can get my diet correct, then that can help with my energy levels. If I have help with they also help with the lifestyle management. So if I can get advice with the trying to manage my sleep better, my stress levels better, all of those things, they all have a huge impact on my chronic illnesses. So yeah, we're working predominantly on the nutrition and the lifestyle management first. And then I'm hoping that if I can get those two things in check, then I'm hoping that it might allow me to do a bit more fitness than what I do at the moment. But it's all early days. But yeah, if you can get your life and your nutrition sorted, it should hopefully lead on to better fitness.
And we all kind of know that. I will just say, anyone who's listening, obviously Carol's working with somebody who's appropriately qualified in things like nutrition. It's not something that just like a regular personal trainer or someone can give advice on, because it's a little bit more specialised. So, always make sure that you're working with somebody who's appropriately qualified. But we all know that feeling. I mean, I'm a healthy eater generally. Every now and then I'll stop the wagon, get off and have a bit of junk food or whatever, but I pay for it in the way I feel the next couple of days. It really impacts on me. And I think it's really important for people to understand how much of an impact nutrition has on our energy levels generally, but particularly for people who've got a long-term condition that involves fatigue, because, you need the extra energy from good nutrition just to manage your normal day, never mind for exercising or anything on top. So is this something that you would say is massively helping you to really understand energy patterns?
Yeah. So I mean, I will say now I'm very early stages of my journey with this instructor, but I do know from past experience, when I have tried to adjust my nutrition and eat more healthily, it does help. So yeah, as you say, anybody and everybody should be eating more healthily, because it does help energy levels. But yeah, it's magnitude a lot more for somebody with my condition. So yeah, even though it doesn't get rid of the fatigue, it does drop it down a level if I am looking after what I'm eating and how my life is.
And I think that's so important. As I say, always make sure that you're speaking to somebody who's appropriately qualified. But, chronic fatigue isn't just something to do with chronic fatigue syndrome. It's also a consequence, if you like, of things. I mean, a lot of people who have cancer or gone through certain cancer treatments will have cancer-related fatigue. So again, it's a similar principle, although that tends to be shorter term rather than long term. This applies to anybody who has any kind of condition where chronic fatigue is an issue. And I think this is where we need a lot more people who specialise in this field holistically, like you're working with somebody who specialises holistically, rather than just saying, let's go and be active. So you mentioned stress management. How important is that on fatigue levels? Because I think most of us will recognise that when we're a bit stressed, we're probably short-tempered and tired. But I imagine for you, it has maybe a bigger impact.
Yeah. 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 I can tell if I am having a stressful day, not necessarily with work. It can be stress with anything. It can be something's gone wrong at home or whatever. But yeah, I can tell straight away the exhaustion. It just kind of hits me like a wall, just in one go. It's really, it's quite surreal to explain it. I can be fine one moment. I can then have this stressful situation that I'm trying to deal with. And then I feel it physically hit. I feel the exhaustion just physically hit me. And that's it. I'm absolutely done for the day.
Talking about kind of that sort of impact that you're done for the day, obviously you work as virtual assistant and community manager. You really support people in summits and online events and things like that, which has to be quite a busy job, if not stressful as well. How do you manage working around having these chronic conditions?
I find them, they're very busy. They're very full on. But I think because I enjoy that kind of thing so much, it doesn't stress me. So I can have an absolute crazy busy day helping to pull summits together, project management. I help clients like project manage their work as well. And so, yeah, they can be really full on. You really have to be on your toes with things sometimes. You can have quieter days. But yeah, some days you really have to be on your toes. I don't know if it's just because I absolutely love what I do that it doesn't stress me out. So I kind of work better when there's lots of things going on and juggling lots of things with different clients. So I work better with that, and it's a different kind of tired. It's not the same as if, I don't know, say like if we have an issue, if the car broke down, if we had to then find the money to fix the car or something like that is more of the stressful situation which would affect me, as opposed to the busy days at work.
That's really interesting, actually. Yeah. So, I mean, the key thing I'm hearing there is that because you enjoy your work, it's kind of a manageable stress rather than a stressful stress, if that makes sense to people.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, it's tiring. I'm tired by the end of the day when I've had a busy day, but I don't. It just doesn't seem to affect me as much as, say, if something's gone wrong. That kind of stress. That's the one that really does suddenly just hit me like a brick.
So, just thinking on the top of my head here now, what you're saying is that the kind of things that you know are likely to be stressful are such as work. You know that the issues that may arise, you know how to manage them if they do. So it's kind of known stressful things but also that you know you can manage, actually don't contribute to your stress overload, whereas unexpected, unknown things that crop up actually do. So big argument there for actually monitoring your stress.
Yeah,
monitoring what stresses you out is so important then.
Definitely. Yeah. So yeah, as you say, the stresses at work, I know things. If I'm helping with a summit or if I'm helping with a project, I know those things are going to be full on. So you kind of expect them, and I still love them. But yes, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's the unexpected things that can crop up. And yeah, those are the ones my body just doesn't know how to deal with them. I know how to deal with anything that goes on at work. But yeah, my body doesn't know how to deal with an unexpected outside stress. And yeah, that's the one.
We talk an awful lot about stress management generally, holistically, but actually I think stress awareness is an equally important part of that, because until you're aware of what stresses you, it's hard to manage it. So yeah, definitely. So you mentioned having flare-ups and things like that, which for people listening who aren't sure, flare-up is when kind of like symptoms kind of occur or magnify or are exacerbated. How do you manage both everyday life but also work when you do have a flare-up of your conditions?
Generally with my everyday life, I kind of I have to be very strict with my time. I have to be very strict with my time blocking. So like during my work life, for example, I will do work for an hour and then I will come away from the screen and I will just sit down, or I will go for a walk to get away from everything just for 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. And then I will come back to work. And I tend to spend my days doing that with time blocking. I found that's helped immensely. If we're talking personal life, and say, because I have two children, one of them's just she's only 6, and so obviously we do lots of days out with her. So we have to plan our weekends. We quite often plan a Saturday, we'll go out and take her out for the day somewhere, but I know I'm going to be tired on the Sunday.
Right.
So Sunday is more of a relax at home day, put my feet up, just potter about, maybe just have a little walk out somewhere. So it's kind of recognizing what's going to maybe give me a flare up and accounting for it and trying to be prepared for it.
And that is important, isn't it? And I know time management is something that you also offer as a service. And I guess a lot of that's come from your own experiences of how important it is to manage time effectively. And that is, I mean, I think it's important for all of us, but particularly if you have a condition where fatigue is an issue, it's finding your way. I mean, I know I can work at the computer for so long and then I don't have any fatigue issues as such, but I know that I work better when I give myself breaks from work. And it's something that I've learned from experiences. Sometimes I'll get to the end of the day and I'm really shattered. My stress levels are high, and it's because I haven't stepped away and sat in the garden or had a cup of coffee. And I'm really strict about things like, if I have coffee, I will stop. I will find myself a quiet space and focus on my coffee rather than have a cold cup sat on my desk for 3 hours. I think it's working out the best way of managing your time for you, isn't it? Because other people need to work in big blocks, others shorter blocks, like you say. And I think that's a really important service to offer people, because it improves your productivity so much, doesn't it, when your time management's efficient? Yeah. So thinking about the advice you were or you weren't given when you were diagnosed and ongoing, what would you like anybody involved in the field of physical activity or fitness instruction or anything like that, what would you like them to understand and be able to do with clients?
Good question. So first of all, I think it would be good to understand the whole package of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. So it's not just a case of it's the pains and the fatigue. I think it's understanding and recognizing that it's the whole of the life that needs looking at. So Right. It is the nutrition, it is the lifestyle. And then, obviously it would be good. They don't need a doctor's degree in these illnesses, but it would be good if they could understand just a small bit about the background. Like say for chronic fatigue, to understand that it's the nervous system that's affected. And so it's hard to get, the nerves sometimes. They can be very sensitive. So Right. Maybe if somebody in the fitness industry could understand that kind of thing, maybe they could think about tailoring the exercise to specific issues. Like, so understanding weightlifting is going to be hard on the body, and very, very, of course it's physical for everybody, but it's a lot more physical for somebody with Right. a chronic illness. I think somebody who just has just a tiny bit of understanding of the illness, and then they can obviously tailor the fitness to that illness, what would be suitable, what definitely really wouldn't be great to even think about doing, what's something, yes, we can have a go at this one, see how you get on.
But also, I suppose, having plan A, B, C, D, E, F, because for if you're feeling different ways on different days, it's saying, right, okay, yeah, the fatigue isn't great at the moment. Okay, we'll focus on maybe stretching and relaxation today. It's kind of a very fluid approach, rather than saying, right, we're going to have a very linear approach. We're starting here and we're going to get fitter and fitter and fitter and fitter and fitter and do more and more and more. It's having a much more fluid approach. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I know you like baking and crafting. I think most of us do. I love crafting. It's very, very relaxing. But obviously walking is something you have mentioned that you do. What is it about walking that you find particularly good?
I don't know. I mean, I like walking by myself. I like walking my family. So with the family, it's a lovely social thing to do. We have 2 sausage dogs, so we take the dogs out for a walk. It's a nice way of socializing, and again, just kind of forgetting about everything going on around you. When I quite often go out for walks during the day as well when I'm working. It's nice just to get your thoughts together. But I don't know. I do find it a very relaxing thing, especially when you've got the lovely weather.
Yeah.
It's just so, it's a good way of switching off. Your brain can switch off and say, yeah, you need to be mentally rested as well. So yeah, I can just totally switch my brain off and just go walking, enjoy the weather, say hi to people as you're walking along. It's just very uplifting.
It's very restorative, isn't it, as well? It's funny, isn't it? We sort of sometimes think, like you've mentioned about relaxing, we sometimes think, relaxing is lying down thinking beautiful thoughts. I mean, there's so much more to it than that. But actually going for a walk in nature can be relaxing, it can be meditative, it can be restorative. It doesn't have to be a brisk walk. It can actually be a stroll, and that's just as good. What other sorts of activity do you do?
So the walking is the main thing for me at the moment. I would like to start doing more things, but the walking is the main thing for me at the moment. I have like machinery at home, so I have like an exercise bike at home, and I will try and get on that as well at home. But my daughter's just learnt to ride her bike, so I think we do need to get out and about on the bikes as well, because that, again, it's an enjoyable thing. It's not too, so long as we're not racing, again, it's quite a gentle exercise. I'd say that's the main thing. If I have chance, swimming's quite a nice one as well. At the moment, again, with the 6-year-old, it's more about splashing and slides and a bit more chaos. But I do. When I used to go swimming, I used to really enjoy doing that as well.
The good thing about swimming, obviously you've got the hydrostatic pressure of the water, which is very supportive for muscles and joints, and it's also it's a good whole body kind of workout, and it's, unless you are a competitive swimmer, you tend to be swimming at a pace that's manageable rather than necessarily fatiguing, isn't it? And again, being in water is a very restorative activity as well. What about things like stretching?
I must admit, I haven't done lots of stretching. I have been recommended things like Pilates.
Yeah.
Apparently that is very good for the body. Again, it's something that it's exercising your body, but obviously not too hard on your body. So yeah, I haven't tried it, but I think it needs to be on my list of things to try.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the thing with stretching, obviously, is that, again, it needs a very kind of try it and see approach, rather than going straight in with long stretches and complex stretches. It's okay, let's just do this, let's take this not quite to the full range of movement, let's just see how your muscles react, because again, as you say, because the nerves are impacted, if you overstretch, it's easy to overstretch without realizing you're overstretching, and then the next day your muscles go, really don't like that, don't do that again. So it's a question of working almost below the level that you think is manageable, and just monitoring it for 24 to 48 hours, and then actually had no side effects, so maybe try a little bit more. But again, this is where a good instructor will really work with you and make sure that it's all being done to the right level. And again, it's important to get that sort of guidance about working to tolerance rather than tension. Those of you listening will know what I mean by that with stretches. Yeah, and it is so important, isn't it? But I think, for me, and I say I've run training in working with people with chronic fatigue, is just, start lower than you think people are capable of. It's not a question of being patronizing or saying, oh, you're not very fit, we won't do much. It's actually testing the tolerance of the activity. The last thing you want is to say, right, I can do this. And then the person comes back and says, actually, I was in bed for 3 days afterwards. You want them to come back and say, I had no real effects at all. And you can try a tiny bit more. And if they're kind of like, I was aware I'd done something, but it wasn't an issue, you've hit the right level. But for me, it's having different things that you can do on different days. If somebody says, actually, not capable of doing that today, it's right, we'll do this instead. What about things like relaxation and meditation and stuff? Is that something that you do?
I think, I'll be honest, I'll say I'm struggling with it at the moment. I don't know if it's because I'm just not the kind of person who does meditation, or I don't know if it's something that you kind of need to practice at and get used to doing. I think I can see the benefits of it. My struggle is switching my brain off. So instead of relaxing and concentrating on meditating, I do quite often find I am thinking about the next thing to do afterwards.
To be honest, I think this is where meditation, like anything, is something that you need to build up. I always say to people to start with just a minute of focusing on your breathing and then build up gradually. But this is actually where guided meditations can be helpful, because you're listening to somebody, you're listening to something, which means that it distracts your mind. But honestly, switching off during a meditation or a relaxation can take ages to learn how to do. So it is worth persevering. But I would say just those shorter sessions, and maybe only a minute at a time initially, and then gradually, as you find you are able to focus on the meditation rather than your thoughts intruding, gradually increase the time. But when you do find your thoughts are popping in, then just sort of ease out of the meditation and allow it, because, like, as I say, it's something that we all need to practice at, and the more we practice it, the better we get at it. I would say find a time of day that you build the regular in. So even if you're not in the mood for 10 minutes, you just sit down and just do 10 deep breaths. Even that can be meditative. But another thing to do, and there's plenty available on the internet, I think I've got one I've recorded as well, things like walking meditations, where you're listening to instructions as you walk, and that can be really soothing as well. So yeah, have a look at walking meditations, because there are a few out there. Yeah, because that can really get you into the practice of it, but actually being being out in nature as well can really help. And as you've said, it's something you already find relaxing and restorative. That might well be a really, really good one to do. So Carol, overall, this has been really interesting for me, because actually but this is so interesting because it's something I do work with a few clients who have various forms of chronic fatigue for various reasons, and it's just so interesting to hear about this more holistic approach, because actually I think that's definitely a way forward, is not just looking at activity as an energizer, but actually looking at the whole of your life, including nutrition, including lifestyle management, stress awareness and management, as well as activity. And I think, activity is almost the last piece of the puzzle. When you've got everything else going, then you're much more likely to find the activity that works for you, but also understand what's right for you from a point of level of intensity and things like that, and being able to adapt. So is there anything you'd like to add for anyone listening out there? Now, they may be instructors, or they may be people with some sort of chronic fatigue issue. So is there anything any advice you'd like to give to people listening?
I guess, first of all, for anybody who hasn't been diagnosed with it, if you are feeling horrendous, if you are feeling absolutely wiped out more often than not, then persevere with your doctors. It could be obviously 101 different things, but I guess first of all, persevering with a diagnosis of something, or hopefully it's just fatigue. But then other than that, once you have been diagnosed with something like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue, to me, it's more a case of just listen to your body, address whatever the individual symptoms are as well. So if you are in pain, deal with the pain. If you are tired, deal with the tiredness. But yeah, just be kind to yourself as well. Don't push yourself, because you will end up feeling, I promise you will end up feeling a lot worse. So be kind to yourself, listen to your body, and just address individual symptoms as and when they arise.
And for all you instructors out there, none of you will be surprised to hear me say this, but get to know your client, because they know their condition so much better than you ever can. They will know the ins and outs, what energizes them, what exhausts them. So get to know your client. And if they say, I can only do 5 minutes of activity, listen to them. Learn some relaxation meditation techniques that you can use other time to sort of help people with. But it's so important to recognize that, your client is the expert on their condition, not you. You are working with them to create some sort of activity plan, but it's a plan. It's not a dictatorial kind of, you must do this. Chuck the linear approaches out of the window, have a very much as tolerated approach. And do you know what? If there are days where activity is not possible, that's okay. It just means that the client is listening to their body. Yeah.
Definitely. I think as well that the one-to-one approach is also, for me personally, the one-to-one approach has also been a lot better than group approaches. I've tried being in groups, attacking nutrition and lifestyle and fitness, and it hasn't worked. So again, I'm benefiting a lot more already from this one-to-one tailored approach. It really is fantastic.
It does sound it, actually, and it's something I think I'd like to find out more about myself. But so we talked at the beginning about the fact that you are a virtual assistant. You help people with managing their communities, online events and summits and things like that, but also time management, which is a really key one. Where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Okay, you can find me. I'm everywhere. So the name of my business is CS Business Support. I have a website which is csbusinesssupport.co.uk. That's my website. You will also find me. I spend a lot of time over on LinkedIn, so just Carol Searle over on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram, and that would be with my handle of CS Business Support. I also have a business page on Facebook as well, but yeah, mainly I'm quite often on LinkedIn. So please, anyone, do feel free to connect with me and get in touch if I can help with anything, or just to have a chat with anything. I'm always contactable.
I think, from what you're saying, there's no reason why you can't have a business, why you can't work with some of these chronic fatigue conditions. It's just a question of understanding them, managing expectations about what you can and can't do. So I think, definitely there's a niche there, isn't there, for supporting people with a chronic fatigue condition in having, as normal a life as possible. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Carol. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. You've been listening to Sarah Bolitho and Carol Searle on Creating Active Lives. We will see you in the next episode. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.